and welcome to my channel, Haylee Marie Vintage. Today I will be showing you all the things I've been sewing and working on when I have been off camera. The bulk of this work I did on a retreat actually back in January, but sometimes in the evening after work, I find myself needing to sew to kind of like wind my brain down and get in like a good state. So I have, I think, 10 items for you today that I've made. So essentially, I guess this is what I like made in the last 6 months off camera. As you guys see, I make a lot of stuff on camera too, but I like to just show you guys updates of what I'm working on off camera as well. So I'm showing you all the shirts I made, all the bottoms I made, and then sets and dresses. So a lot of times what I work on off camera is something that's a little bit more of a basic. So a good example of that is this here. This is a little rose peasant blouse that I made primarily to like layer with like corset-like pieces and like tuck in. This was also with really, really cheap fabric, as in like I thrifted it. So it was also like kind of a mock-up test. I think in general, I just need to learn a little bit how to bring in shoulders the tiniest bit. But otherwise, I think this blouse turned out really cute. It's kind of wrinkled. It's been sitting in a drawer. For this guy here, this took me 4 hours and 45 minutes to make, and it cost me $28.74. So really quite a cheap project and a good one to test this pattern out on. I'll definitely be using this pattern again. I like it. I have other peasant blouses that just like don't feel as structured, but this feels like a very structured peasant blouse. And what's actually really interesting about it too is even though like the top is hard set by this band, often it'll actually be elastic, so it's easier to get on and off. As well as usually you don't have darts here because you're tucking it in. Here it has like some darts and some pleats, so that way it tucks in really nicely and you don't have to think about it. I think that's one of the most interesting things about blouse patterns from the 40s and 50s is they were always made to be tucked in. Well, not always, but like if they show them tucked in, it means they've done a bunch of like pleating and stuff that makes it so when you tuck it in, it's really easy to like not have weird bunching and not have to like kind of distribute the shirt yourself the way you do with like a more modern blouse that you're just going to tuck into a skirt. Although the like con to that is it makes pieces like this usually look not so great if you don't have them tucked in. The other one thing this one had that you can see here is it has this kind of little sleeve shoulder pad insert thing that I think is really nice and gives my shoulders a little bit more definition. Next up, I have this blouse, or I guess it's not a blouse. It's technically basically a t-shirt. This is a knit. If you've been around on this channel, you know I rarely ever work with knits. And they're kind of something, I don't want to say that like I'm afraid of, but they're just not something I use that often, even though I think in the future I would really like to change that. This top came together super fast. It took me 2.5 hours, and then it was a little bit more expensive because it's this like really cute little like confetti style. So it did cost me $48.40 to make because the fabric was a little bit more spendy. The pattern I did use though was free. I just bought a scoop neck extension to it. So this is easily an accessible pattern that comes in a lot of sizes. This is actually a modern pattern that I think still gives a really great vintage look. I made this again for kind of like that layering piece, even though I will definitely also be wearing it on its own. I really like wearing this with overalls in the winter. We're in the middle of a heat wave here in Seattle, so the idea of wearing almost any of these clothes makes me want to die, but most of the time the climate here is just cool enough that you want to wear your long sleeves. So this was really useful for me, and the biggest difference with this is I made this I go to these sewing retreats. I try to go twice a year, but this year I'm only going to have made it the one time. And what's great about going there is I'm with other seamstresses who are super experienced. So I actually brought this knit and I used one of their sergers to make it, and it convinced me that I wanted a serger in my repertoire of things to use because sergers are just a lot easier to use with knits. One of my friends then later decluttered one of her mother's serger that she inherited. So I have that sitting on my kitchen counter. Admittedly, I need to take it into the shop, get it like in spick span, whatever. I don't even know what I'm saying. I will have a serger, and hopefully that means you'll see more knits on my channel. And hopefully that will mean like I'll show you more ways to like use modern patterns to kind of get that like vintage or cottagecore vibe with the way you use fabrics and styling it. Even though this piece is so basic, it's one of my favorites to have in my wardrobe now. Next up, I have another blouse. This fabric has like little cactuses and flowers and things. I think it's super cute. And this is actually the pattern I used for a like dish towel blouse that I made on my channel. So I'll pop that down below, I guess, in the description. So I have made this pattern on camera, but this is actually the first version I made of that made me realize that this was a fantastic pattern for when I was going to be making like upcycled blouses, because I just think this is like such a solid staple blouse pattern that with like this up here gives you a little bit of space to have more fun with it. So with that, this one actually took me a lot longer. This took me 5.5 hours, so this is definitely the longest piece I've talked about so far. And then this one cost me $41.67 because I got the fabric fairly discounted from a fabric store that was going out of business. I love it. It's very me. It's very like girly with a little bit of like a Western flair. I like wearing it with a bolo tie. It's great. Next up, we'll move into bottoms. So for one of the bottoms that I made, it's this pair of navy floral short. So I had taken that pants fitting class that was really terrible at Sew Expo in hopes of learning how to do this, how to like make basically the rear bigger so that way things fit me better. This person who we took the class from very much has her own method that I can't find anybody else on the internet who does it this way, and I suspect it's because it gives a bit of diaper butt. I made these out of like a fabric that I was not attached to, I didn't spend a lot of money on, and I will still wear these even though they do give diaper butt, but it was a good trial on some cheap fabric with a pattern that I've used a ton to see if like the basically full bust adjustment but on the butt method that she teaches works. It doesn't work for me. If it works for other people, that's great, but I'm gonna instead now go and try the more traditional way to add more room in the seat. But these took me 3 hours and 15 minutes to make. That was that fast just for a few reasons. I've made this is like my go-to shorts pattern. I haven't made it since I've had a lot of weight fluctuations, so I did do just like a lot of math to get this up to my weight, because usually this is made for 24-inch waist, and I did scale the pattern up to a 28-inch waist. So that also, I guess, could have added to the diaper butt experience I created with these, but I sort of suspect it's not just that. I think her method is bad. These only cost me $14.05 to make because I think I either thrifted this fabric. Like I said, I'll still wear these. I just like, I'm glad I used these as a fit experiment because they were so low stakes, because I definitely am not 100% happy with the fit on these. Speaking of things that maybe don't fit the best, this is a pair of pants I made out of a rayon that I picked up on that big annual sale. These I was making kind of as a tester because I hadn't really made pants. Because they're rayon and I made these on the retreat that I was just talking about, I did end up using a serger, and they're really cute. However, they're just a smidge too small for me. I'm not going to show you any modeling footage for these because they don't fit the way they should at all. It's so funny because like the waist range fit me, but I didn't even think to look at the hip range. And so it fits me great in the waist. It fits me pretty well down the leg, but in the hip region, it's pretty tight, and the back seam is at a risk of bulging open. So I'm gonna retry this pattern, and I just need to make some adjustments. This is actually not gonna be a big deal to size up. It should be pretty simple, but I'm definitely interested in making this pattern again because I think these pants are really cute, and if they fit me, I think they'd be really cute. There's something I definitely want to move forward with experimenting with later this year. These took me 4 hours to make. This was again with a serger, which means I didn't have to think about seam finishing, which is really nice, I'm not gonna lie. This was, like I said, fabric from that sale, so these only cost me $9.93 to make. Both this and the other piece that were pretty cheap to make are just a great example of, as a seamstress who does buy a lot of really expensive fabric, it's a good example of me showing you how I try and test things on a very low stakes material, but that's something that I would still wear and love. But like, I wouldn't also like cry over like the money I spent if somehow I'm not able to make it work. This one here, I think this is really cute. When I made this, it was a smidge too small. It's still, I guess, then technically a smidge too small. However, I think it's totally okay. This is again some fabric from that same sale. I really like, there's something about the way they had you do the pockets that give you like a nice well pocket type feel. I like the buttons up the front. You probably won't really be able to tell. My biggest thing with the buttons in the front is I used white interfacing with this navy. So where I slit the buttons open, you can see a bunch of white thread, and it really bothers me. But last time I did a big interfacing order, I ordered a bunch of black interfacing, so in the future I can avoid things like that. But yeah, I think this skirt's pretty cute. I think, like I said, I could have made it just the tiniest bit bigger, and I could probably add a little fullness to the rear, but I think it's gonna be a really effective piece in my wardrobe, and I do think I would like to make this pattern again. This was not the easiest pattern pattern to make because this front fly thing is not the easiest thing to make, but it did make skirts can be kind of boring. So it did result in the skirts pattern being a more interesting make than maybe most skirts are. It also meant it took longer though. This took me 5.5 hours, which is pretty long for a skirt. Usually if a skirt takes me that long, it has a ton of detailing, which it could be argued this one does have a bunch of detailing because you can see like the top stitching on the pockets and stuff. It was long for a skirt, but it only cost me $21 to make because again, this was a material I was making kind of experimentally out of a pattern that I'd really like to use more often, but I wanted to make sure it worked before I used it on any of like the nice wool I have. Continuing with our last bottom here, this is a really cute skirt to show you what's cute about it. This is a blue gingham skirt that actually I specifically bought this gingham to go with this trim. I picked up this trim, which is like these lemons and pears and vases while I was in Italy, and I loved it, but I couldn't quite figure out how to use it with stuff that was already in my stash. But I realized it would pair really well with a gingham, and then I added this extra little ruffle. These were additions to the pattern, and what I will say is frustrating about this project is the pattern for this that I bought, I spent $26 on, and the listing listed it as complete. I opened the pattern packet. It had the ruffle and it had the cummerbund. It was missing the front piece entirely, and the back piece had been like cut up to the point that you couldn't use it. So I actually had to go back to a tried and true skirt pattern that I really love and kind of draft some pieces from that to be able to even make this skirt. It turned out fine. I'm just like not pleased with the fact that the pattern was that expensive and had been marked as being checked and complete, and it was not. And because I bought it like a year ago, like I didn't use it right away, I like can't really leave that feedback anywhere. I don't know, maybe I will message them. I'm pretty annoyed about it. Usually if I'm getting a pattern that is not checked and complete, I don't pay more than $10 if I'm taking that gamble on a pattern. If I'm paying that much for a pattern, I would really like it to be complete, and I will actually require the description states it's complete. And so the fact that it was stated it was complete and it was like so far from a complete pattern, it was pretty frustrating. Even though I think I ended up with a really fantastic result, I was only able to do that because of my own ingenuity, I guess, and having an extensive pattern collection. All that said, this took me 4 hours to make. It was pretty straightforward because it's basically a half circle skirt with an additional ruffle and then adding this gathered trim and this ribbon to it. So it didn't take that long considering like how complex something like this looks, and it's really cute. It's really cottagecore. I feel really good in this skirt, and because of both the pattern, well, the fact that I had to use 2 patterns and the fabric itself was kind of expensive, this did cost me $76.09 to make. Also plus all this and that, like that cost just added up with this skirt pretty quickly. But I now have a good model for making a skirt like this, which means in the future I can make this a lot cheaper, especially once I go to that sale this year, because that's where I pick up all of my cheap trim. So for my next project, I'll show you, it's a 2-piece. So this is the skirt. It's just a plain, I think 4-gourd skirt that admittedly again needs that tiny bit more fullness in the butt, which is just something I need to be more in the habit of measuring and checking for. I'm really good about checking waist measurements to make sure everything's going to fit there, but I'm not always the best at remembering to check specifically like seat or like butt measuring to make sure it's going to work. And this is like a 2-piece dress, for lack of a better term, that this is the little jacket slash blouse for. You wouldn't really use this as a jacket. It is really set up to be a blouse. It's a blouse weight, but it's really, really cute. I will say I am trying to decide if this is like too professional of a vibe for me. Like if this isn't my vibe, I don't know. I feel like I'm in a very weird place with my style where I'm less open to experimentation than I was a few years ago. And I feel like this is just like a little bit too person at the office vibe for me. But I do think it's really cute. I think if I mix it and match it with other pieces in my wardrobe, I'll really like both pieces. And the other thing with this project that I think also resulted in it being a little weird in the way it turned out is I actually cut these pieces back in, I think, February, and I didn't actually sew it up until I think it was June. Also, like I had pattern pieces sitting around for a while, which means I'm sure they warped and stretched. I then like had a hard time tracking like what I was thinking when I was cutting things, so any adjustments I made there didn't maybe turn out the best. I'm actually not a unfinished project type of person. Like once I start a project, I see it all the way through. It's really rare for me to cut something out and let it sit like that. I think I will try to avoid that in the future because I really don't enjoy how that whole process went. I do think this is cute, and I also think it's hard to say because like I started cutting this in February February because this would have been really cute and great to wear in that early spring cooler months. When I've like tried this on or worn it around, it's too hot for this type of outfit. So I also don't know if I feel like kind of cramped and hot in it because it's too hot to wear it. So we'll see how I feel about it later. I can't say like it's my favorite right now, but I'm going to give it plenty of opportunities to have its moment in the sun or in the shade rain is more accurate before I decide like how I actually feel about the piece. I didn't tell you how long it took me to make or how much it cost. This took me 10 hours and 15 minutes to make, and it cost me $50.07 to make. Next up, I think this dress is pretty cute. It's this dress with side gathers that nips in at the waist. I don't know how much I like this dress, even though like I think objectively it's very cute. I don't know how much I like it for like my own style. I really like the fabric. You know what? I'm gonna put this on my to wear list this week because this is also something that I made. I completed this in the winter and I haven't really worn it in the summer, which is when I would wear like a really lightweight kind of gauzy cotton. So I'm gonna put it on my list to wear this week, or maybe not during a heat wave because I hate everything I wear during a heat wave. But I will put this on my list to wear over the summer and I think I'll feel a lot better about it. The other thing that I think I just need to be doing is when they have kind of like this side gather, it's almost like not enough. I almost want more volume there because like for me the whole point of that is to like embrace my hips, call attention to my hips, and I think because of like the fact that I guess I'm technically a pear shape, I just think I maybe need more volume in those side gathers than maybe somebody who has a little bit less hip. So I might give that a try because I think it's like I want it to be kind of like a campy emphasis of my hips, and I feel like instead it's kind of like not celebratory of my hips enough. I bought this fabric. This is like authentic vintage fabric that I picked up at Backroom Finds, aka Stephanie Canada, actually well before I knew her, like personally knew her. So I've had this one sitting in my stash for quite a long time. This took me 8 hours and 15 minutes to make, and it cost me $52.26 to make. I do want to call attention to the prices. The prices of most of these things that I'm making, with the exception of that skirt and what I'm about to show you, is fast fashion prices. So again, this is why like I encourage you to think about if you sew your own wardrobe, like it is more expensive, but it's also because like we're so used to like ultra fast fashion, not even just regular fast fashion. So I do feel like everything in this that I've made, I'm like pretty happy with the cost. Also, how is there staining already on this bib? Oh, other thing to note, this bib is detachable, which is pretty neat. And I think it also just might be the bib that I don't like so much. I don't know. I also just like feel like I'm in like a weird, I don't want to say rut because I've made 4 or 5 things in the past 6 months that I absolutely adore, but I feel like I've been making some things more often that like I don't love as much as I think I love them in like concept in my mind. I suspect that when I like don't think of these as projects as much, I'll chill out. But like I just also want to encourage you. I feel like as seamstresses, sometimes we feel like we have to love everything we make and everything has to be a success, like a 10 out of 10 success. It doesn't need to be that way. Some things can be trial, some things you can test. Like not everything has to work out and become your most favorite item. Because like out of these 10 items, I think like I really love 4 of them. The rest of them are just like things that like I learned from and that I'll still wear and I'll still enjoy, but they won't be like the thing that like makes me feel like I'm at home in my skin, if that makes sense. I will show you the last thing from this that I made recently. This is one that makes me feel absolutely like myself. I've worn this in videos. Every time I wear it, I get asked about it. Here it is. Here's your info. I always list out, by the way, all the patterns down below with their numbers and stuff if you want to try to seek it out. This one's going to be pretty hard to find because I believe it's a Hollywood. Yeah, this is a Hollywood dress. I have made, actually, if you want a full video process on a dress this style, this is the same dress that I made my wisteria dress last year based on. I'll try to remember to link that down below as well. This time I did a few more alterations to get the sleeves even wider and more comfortable on my arms. I also did like widen up the waist a little bit, and I feel so good in this dress. Oh, and I also dropped the bust line down a tiny bit so it would actually hit where it should, and I feel really good in this dress. Like this is a 10 out of 10, this is me type of thing. I adore it. It took me 9 hours and 15 minutes to make and cost $77.66. What a fun number. And yeah, I adore this dress. I've worn this dress a lot. This dress is like pretty regularly in my rotation because it's comfortable and it makes me feel beautiful. And like those are the two top things in a garment. It's so challenging because I actually think I look beautiful in all of these things, but there's some things that I just feel like more me in, for like lack of a better term. Like I feel like more me in this. I feel more me in this. I feel more like there's certain garments that I just put on and I'm like, oh, this is me. And I don't know how to explain it, but like not every garment gives me that feeling. I can't even predict which garments give me that feeling. Because like when I made this dress, which also gives me that feeling, I definitely didn't think it would necessarily result in me getting that feeling. I really, really hope this for everybody, that they experience at least a few pieces in their wardrobe that when they put them on, they say, wow, this is me. I feel at home and I feel comfortable. Even if it's not physically comfortable. Physically comfortable clothes are not everybody's things. I want them to feel like them in their clothes, and this is a dress that makes me feel like me. That was like kind of a weird ramble about clothes, but it is why I sew. I sew because so much more often than when I used to shop. I'll put a piece on that I've just made and it will just feel like home and feel like me and make me feel, I don't know, just beautiful, but like it's out even outside of beautiful. Like it makes me feel beautiful on the inside as well. But yeah, that's kind of the summary of what I've made in the last 6 months. So as we look into the future, we won't probably do another one of these videos until maybe my second to last video of the year. So like, I guess behind the scenes tidbit. Right now with my sewing schedule, I am due to finish all of my sewing makes, on camera sewing makes in September, which will give me an October, November, and half of December to just sew off camera and really enjoy myself doing that. So it'll be interesting to also see all these garments were made like in conjunction with me also sewing on camera. So I think it'll be interesting to see what I'm able to accomplish in those like 2.5, 3 months that I'll have where I'm not also sewing on camera. Basically, my goal is to, I think, take probably all of November off of YouTube. You guys won't be able to tell because I'll have pre-filmed and everything, but like on the back end, like no filming, no sewing for filming, like no doing anything like that. I think that's my goal in November. I'm pretty excited about it. Being a person on the internet who sews, sometimes it's really hard to, I don't want to say like enjoy the process, but there's something about just like not having to move cameras around and not having to think about how I'm going to clearly show how I do things and like whatever. Like it's really nice to just like let my brain be my brain and do things in whatever weird way I want when I sew. And I do give you guys videos where I show you guys what my actual sewing process is when I'm not on camera, but I still have to think for those videos for the camera. So I'm pretty excited to have like a few months of sewing this year that literally like no one has to see how I make the thing. You're just going to see the magical project at the end. And I think that's really cool. And I think I'm just like in a weird space where I accidentally monetized my hobby. I think it's like at my core, I'm trying to figure out like what makes me happiest as a seamstress. That's like something that when I talk to other people who also sew clothes, it seems like we all have that struggle. Like whether you do your sewing on camera or not, and you do sewing for the world to see or not, it seems to be like talking to a lot of my friends, both my YouTube friends and my non-YouTube friends, it seems like there's just kind of like a lot of angst in the creative process, even if it's something like sewing your own clothes. So it's just kind of, I don't know, I feel like I've been in my feels and in reflection about like what I'm making a lot recently. And I when I get together and I show like 10 items that I've made in the last 6 months, it definitely just like gets me kind of on that thinking mode. This thought journey didn't really have a purpose. I'm sure a lot of you checked out. For those of you who didn't, I'd just be curious how you feel about sewing, if you sew, kind of what your creative journey is like, because we're all so different and that's what's so fun about it. But yeah, with that, I am going to sign off for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed seeing what I've created off camera over the past 6 months, gotten some answers on some things that you have asked me about when I've been wearing them. And I hope this just inspires you to try some things and fail, because there were certainly some things in this video. I guess I would describe the black pants that don't fit me as a complete fail. So I just would like to encourage you guys to also fail in your creative process sometimes, and give yourself grace on that. So hopefully this helped like demonstrate that. As always, you can support this channel by giving this a thumbs up and commenting down below. I also have a Patreon that I will guarantee that you get some stuff ahead of time. I have not been as good as sharing some behind the scenes stuff that I would like to show, but you do get polls, you do get early access to videos. But if we're honest, the reason to join my Patreon is mostly just because you want to financially support. And of course, I never expect that of anyone who watches my videos. If you're still around, definitely subscribe down below. I post every single Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and I will see you next week. Bye!